Hello everybody, I am Tom and you are watching me read. So I have just read through all of the Bungie blog posts for all of the upcoming things that they've got planned for Destiny 2 in the coming years. So I'm going to go over and do a quick TLDR of them. I did read all of them out and was going to have that as a video, but it was like 45 minutes long. No one's going to watch all that shit. I'm just going to give you the TLDR. So first things first, we have the 10th anniversary. So there is currently an event going on in Destiny for their 10th anniversary. There is a set of armor that you can get. Each armor set can be found starting today, September 9th, when exploring the surrounding the tower in the Pale Heart. So you can get an armor set, it's a new armor set. There is also a title to get, which is the Legend title. So if you want to go and do that, you have to beat the final shape on Legend difficulty, and then do a bunch of other activities as well, and then you can get the Legend title. That is also available today. You can grind it starting from today, going forward. Next up, they also have a nerf Ace of Spades coming out. If you earn the title, you get the ability to pre-order it, essentially, and get it slightly earlier. There is also a skin in-game that matches the nerf gun as well for Ace of Spades. Not going to spend money on it, but it does look very, very cool. Alright, moving on. We have codename Frontiers, paving the way for our new frontiers. We'll go over these relatively quickly. They're going to be moving to 2 expansions per year. So they're going to have an expansion every 6 months, and there's going to be 2 major updates in that season. One starting at the start of the expansion, and then one halfway through. So we're essentially going back to 4 seasons a year. It is noting that these big quote-unquote major updates, or seasons, as I'm going to call them, because that's essentially what they are going to be free for all players. So that is a massive W, because it means that people aren't going to be nickel and diming to try and figure out, oh, do I buy this season? Do I buy that season? I don't know what to buy. Free. 4 major updates of free content every year. Fantastic. And then 2 paid expansions. That's fantastic. Next up, we have Dev Insight Deep Dives. There's 3 that are going through right now. There is the core activities, the rewards for the core activities, and the portal. The portal is essentially just going to be a new hub that makes things far more clear for what you're supposed to be doing, rather than having just the map of all the planets and you're like, where do I go? What do I do? I don't know. So it's going to be much better for newer players, I think. But we're going to go over what Tyson Green says about who is the new director of Destiny 2. He's going over what he's talking about for the future of Destiny. I will highlight some specific points in here. First off, he recognizes that the game has become too rigid, expansions have become too formulaic, and everyone knows what's going to happen, and they are over too quickly, so you can't actually get to them in time. So, starting with annual expansions, they love creating annual expansions, they're particularly proud of the final shape, but they want to invest in things that are more impactful for players on the long term. So rather than having an annual expansion that is just, here's the story, you're done, it's going to interweave a lot of the core mechanics of the game into it more intuitively. That's at least their plan. We'll see how well it actually comes out. And then for seasons, they're changing to 2 expansions a year, and the seasonal model is also going to be changing, so they're going to have, rather than 3 episodes, they're going to be having 4 updates per year. One every 3 months, so we're essentially back to seasons. Didn't last very long on those episodes, really, did it? But every 3 months, they're going to have a big refresh to the core game. With new and reprised content, including they're going to have strikes, exotic missions, and new model and new game modes entirely, like Onslaught. The rewards are changing, so weapons, armor, artifact mods, exotics, all that kind of stuff is going to be changing. They have new weekly events, new features, and they're going to do big combat meta passes, essentially. So that all sounds really good. Moving on to the core game, they're changing the approachability. So what they want to do is they want to make the core game customizable for difficulty, where you can make the game far more difficult and get far better rewards. That is the general idea of this. I'll go into this in more depth when we go into the actual core gameplay thing, because there is a whole blog post about it that goes in depth. This is kind of just an overview. But they're just saying that it shouldn't be 100% RNG whether you get good weapons. You should be able to focus a subset of weapons, go in and do the thing you need to do to get them, and you should be able to make that way more difficult to get a higher chance of getting what you want. And getting good versions of what you want as well. Which is obviously what you need, right? That's fantastic. Next up, we have Alison Lers, who is the narrative director of D2. And she is talking about going forward. The big thing here, she talks a lot about all of the kind of stuff that going in. The first codename Apollo is the first thing they're talking about. However, the main thing she's saying is that it is a non-linear character-driven adventure. What they mean by non-linear is essentially what you would expect. It's kind of, you start out at point A, and rather than having to go B, C, D, you can kind of do them in any order you wish. It's kind of more open-ended. They have said, though, which is a very good line, I'll find it specifically in here to actually... Here it is. Destiny is at its best when it's mysterious, weird, and not afraid to try new things. This shift to non-linear stories isn't something we're locked ourselves into, but it is the structure that fits Codename Apollo best. The narrative structure of the releases that follows will be quite different, a structure that suits that game's experience, and we want to continue to innovate in which expansions across both gameplay and narrative. This is fantastic. So essentially they're saying that they're not going to stick to a rigid formulaic way of doing the story, they're going to tell the story in the way that makes sense for the story they're telling. Fantastic. It's the biggest problem I had with the first episode, is that the story would have been so well told if there wasn't this random time gating and shit. And they just told the story as they wanted to tell the story in a row, but the formulaic nature of it had made it just shit, in my opinion. Story itself, good. Presentation of the story, shit. Okay, and then moving on to the unknown, going forward and how they're going to have a multi-year arc like they did with the Light and Darkness saga, with something else that follows a particular theme. She didn't want to spoil what the theme is, but she thinks it's great. That's good. Until we see it, I can't really comment. Alright, moving on. Alright, so challenge customization. The major change to core game activities is that they will all support deeper personal mastery and a corresponding deep reward offering. We'll start with PvE activities, then dive into the Crucible and PvP, which present unique challenges. All of the PvE activities will now support robust challenge customization, exposed as new options alongside selecting the difficulty. So you can see here we have the regular, although slightly buffed, selection of the difficulty on the left. You have advanced through expert through master, and then on the right hand side here we have being able to add extra modifiers, which, as you can see from the top to the bottom, you add extra modifiers and you take it from a silver reward tier to a gold reward tier, so you get more things. Sounds great to me. Adding more difficulty to get better rewards, fantastic. They already kind of did that with the advanced expert master, but adding another layer on top of that for more customization, even better. When I was reading through it, the immediate thing that I thought was, if they let you customize this to a high degree, to which I mean a high specificity, that means you'll be able to build craft around a specific build that, you can do hard content, you could do uber hard content at a very specific set of modifiers that your build can handle. If they pull that off, that'll be very, very good. I'm really hoping that's what they're aiming for, because I want to be able to, rather than just have generic difficulty, I want specific difficulty that I can then tailor my build to, because that would be fantastic. I would love that more than anything, because it makes build crafting better as well, right? But the kind of things they're talking about is introducing new combat abilities to increase the threat, introduce new combat challenges that change how you have to play, provide incentives for changing up your build crafting, and raise the power target for the activity globally, which increases the difficulty. So you still have increasing the power target, so that is just going to essentially, you take more damage, you deal less damage. That's kind of a baseline that is still there, but they're also going to be introducing new things like essentially modifiers that you get on Nightfalls and things, is my assumption. But I think you're going to be able to choose them more specifically, which sounds fantastic. And then talking about reward rating, which is the higher the difficulty you do, the more rewarded you are, whether that be in more guns or having more resources. It just seems like a fantastic idea. It goes into a bit of how it actually determines rating in the next article, so we'll go over that in a second. But talking about Crucible, obviously you cannot change the difficulty of Crucible. It doesn't really work like that because it's PvP. But they're essentially saying, we haven't figured out what to do with that yet. We're going to still try and do more, right? I don't know either. It's a hard one, how you change PvP without completely breaking everything and destroying how many people are playing and all that kind of thing. So it is a unique challenge, but I also think that PvP, the people who like it are going to be playing it anyway, pretty much no matter what you do, as long as it's balanced well. So you're going to make sure it's balanced well. That's one thing. You also have to have it be insanely rewarding so that people go in to play it. That's the big thing, is you need people who wouldn't play PvP otherwise to go into there for rewards, because that means the pool's bigger, which makes everybody have a better time. Talking about expansion activities, so the stories in destination activities present some unique challenges and how they'll relate to power and challenge and changing seasons. Our intended outcome is that expansion content is always a great way to start off a season and will have a path to high tier weapons and armor, but the progress via core game activities will be part of that path. So they want you to be always doing core activities, as opposed to now where you go into the expansion, you just do expansion stuff. You don't do any strikes, you don't do anything else. And then after you finish, you go and do the shitty strikes and all that kind of shit afterwards. Or do what I do and just stop playing. That's pretty much what's been happening with me. Raids and dungeons released with expansions will still represent a pinnacle challenge for players and will have their own path to the highest tiers of weapons and armor too. Old activities, seasonal activities will still be leaving at the end of the year, depending. I'm sure some of them will stay if they're good, by the sounds of what they're talking about. But over time, the intention is to clean up the kind of relay a bit and put all of it into the portal, which we'll go over in a minute. Specifically getting rid of like the Vanguard Ops playlist and just have that inside the portal as like a separate like 3-player portal, and you do all this random crap in there, you know? Matchmaking with challenge customization. This is the final thing here. They've set it up such that because there is so much customization, you can't have customization with matchmaking. But what they're doing to compensate for that is on a daily rotation, they're adding a higher tier, more difficult version that is match made, but it's curated. So what this means is that if you are playing by yourself and you want to go into a fire team and do a high difficulty thing for better rewards, you won't be able to customize it, but every day there will be something for you to do that is match made. So that's nice. Moving on to the rewards, we kind of pretty much went over the rewards. The only thing that's really notable here is that to weapons and armor, they're adding tiers. I don't really know what this means. I need more specific examples to try and figure out what the hell they're actually talking about here. But essentially the idea is you have the base legendaries is like at tier 1, and when you go all the way up to, in this example, they have a tier 5. I don't know if that's the top tier or what, but the idea is that they become more like adept weapons at that point. And the higher tier weapons and armor drop from the higher tier difficulties. So if you want to do difficult content, you will get better weapons and armor. They don't really give an example of the armor here, but I will say that armor is particularly pointless a lot of the time. So doing something with armor is good. I don't know what they're doing precisely with this tiered system, but it seems that they're trying to essentially bring normal weapons up to the ability to have them at like adept level weapons without doing specific content. So if you can do strikes, but if you make your strikes hard enough, you'll be able to get tier 5 weapons, I think is the idea. They've also talked about putting weapons and armor in specific reward pools. I think the idea here being, if you do easy PvE activity, there is a pool of weapons and armor you can get. If you do easy PvP, difficult PvE, difficult PvP, they all have different pools of things you can get. That sounds good. I think that's probably a good idea. They then also have story stuff, and raid and dungeon stuff is going to be the same for the most part. They're also changing the category of new gear. The reason they're mainly doing this, I think, is twofold. One, they want it to be able to use the artifact perks where you get like, this origin trait does stuff better. Rather than doing that, they can be more generic and say, new guns get this effect. So it's essentially an artifact boosting thing is the main thing. And secondarily, they can then start using this category of quote-unquote new gear, which is anything that comes out from that current season is the idea. It'll have like a separate label saying this is from this season, this is new gear. But the other thing they're looking at doing is making specific game modes that only use that gear. For instance, getting bonuses on seasonal activities, which they already do, or seasonal events. But also, like the example they put in here, a Crucible playlist option where players who want to play with and against the newly introduced gear. So you have a Crucible playlist that you can only equip gear from this season? That sounds really cool. That's a cool game mode. So if they can come up with new stuff like that, that sounds really, really good. But when they talk about the new gear, they're not saying that all the old gear is shit, like it's not being sunset or anything, that's still staying in the game, that's all staying, that's fine. It's just the new gear is used for those kind of synergies with the artifact, as well as new game mode types. Old gear is still perfectly obtainable, raids, dungeons, destinations, all that kind of stuff, that's still there. And weapon crafting is still going to be in the game, but they want it to be more of a catch-up mechanism if you missed getting a role that you wanted later, or previously. So I wonder if like guns are starting to become crafted after they're moved from the season. Like if you have a seasonal selection of seasonal guns and then the season ends and you can't get them anymore because it's the next year or whatever, and they've done the full reset, then they'll add them as a way to craft them. I don't know. It's not very clear what they're talking here. It was relatively vague. But finally, we move on to the portal. So, the problem they've identified is the destination map, also called the director, is Destiny's vulnerable activity browser and selection screen. Over the years, it has grown to be very unwieldy, making it harder to find specifically what's current and worthwhile to play, and requires even more expert knowledge to navigate to find what you're looking for. Even current players can have difficulty finding a new activity, while new or returning players have even greater trouble. Exactly right. Their solution is to have something they're calling the portal screen, which is obviously subject to change as far as the name goes. This here is the early mock-up of the portal, and you can see here they have Solo Ops, Fireteam Ops, Pinnacle Ops, Crucible, Event, Tower, Apollo. Apollo is the name of the code name of the upcoming season, so I assume that is like the seasonal activity that you can launch directly from here, and it has a bunch of other kind of information on the screen. This is obviously a good idea. You really need this going in because new players can't figure anything out, and as a veteran, it's still annoying going through and actually finding stuff. As they said, they offer something new. It's still hard to find. Trying to find like the new quest or whatever. I have to look spend like half a minute looking through the director to find out where I'm going. Anyway, the actual things, the categories they're having on the portal, starters is Solo Ops, 1 to 3 player activities requiring very low time or social commitments. These activities are designed for solo players, yet are still fun with a fire team and are easy to pick up and play for a quick session. Solo Ops will also feature a new activity type, which we will get in a deep dive soon. Originally, I was thinking this means strikes, but if you look at the next one down, we have Fireteam Ops, 3-player activities for match-made or pre-made groups designed for fire teams with more cooperation and coordination. These will feature activities like strikes, onslaught, the coil, and many other types in the future. So strikes are included in this, so I don't know what Solo Ops is. Don't know what this is for. We will find out, I suppose. And then we have Flashpoint Ops, 6-player activities. They're gonna match-make them, so anything with 6-player, that's the general idea. Next we have Pinnacle, so 3-player activities that are challenging, like dungeons, exotic missions, onslaughts. You know what, the harder shit. And then finally we have Crucible, which is just PvP. In addition to the above categories, the portal also provides direct access to the current expansion activities, as well as any current running events like Iron Banner or Festival of the Lost. So it's just a quick access menu to get to everything that is relevant right now, which is such a needed quality of life thing. It's insane that you don't have it already. It's been so long with this navigation screen that just shows you all these planets that are essentially pointless. Moving on, bonus rewards. Every day, several activities in each category will have a bonus reward added to their standard offering. These bonus rewards will include things like specific weapons, specific armor slots, currencies like material and enhanced materials or strange coins. And the bonus reward is guaranteed for the first clear of the day and then has a higher drop rate in the future. This just seems good. It's just more rewards. It doesn't seem like it's going to be something that's so good that you're going to want to go and do it every day, but let's say it's dropping helmet slots and you really need a good helmet. You can go grind Crucible or whatever and you're going to get a bunch of helmets from Crucible. That seems like a good idea. I see no downside. Old activities not going away, except we've already gone over this. What about Gambit? They don't give a shit about Gambit, essentially. It'll remain available in the destination map, but it's not going to be rolled into the portal until at the start of the year, and they're still figuring out a plan for this beloved game mode. We have some ideas ranging from closer integration with Crucible category to standalone events that feature it. They just need to change Gambit a lot. The big problem with Gambit, of course, is the fact that it is the most team-required... It's PvP. You can get away, if you're a good player in PvP, you can carry a team. You can't carry bad players in Gambit, because you can't take their motes off them. So if they don't bank the motes, they can cripple your team. And that's why people don't like playing Gambit, I think. It's having a match-made game mode like that makes it very, very hard for people to enjoy it because one person can fuck over the entire team. And I think that's why it's fallen behind. And they also, haven't updated it since it released, essentially. Like, they've added nothing to it. So adding some more events and things to it could brighten up Gambit, but as of right now, it's essentially like, yeah, Gambit exists. We'll hide it behind some more... we'll hide it behind some layers of UI, so no one needs to see it. Will raids and dungeons be in the portal? Dungeon content will be featured in the Pinnacle Ops category with some alterations to support challenge customization and reward rating. This is interesting. Raids are not initially present, although long-term goal is to try and find a way to put them in there, essentially. I will say, it's interesting here, my initial thought with challenge customization, my brain went to how hard can I make it so I can get the best shit? But it also strikes me that you could potentially do it the other way, right? Like, you could have boons to the character to make the content easier, and then you could make things like dungeons and raids, you could make them match-made if you make them really freaking easy, right? Like, you make a really easy playlist where you can go through and experience the raids and the dungeons and figure out the mechanics in a match-made environment where everything is fucking easy and you get like hardly any loot. And then after you learn how to do it, then those people can go into like proper groups and actually play the raid and the dungeon and stuff like that. Like, the actual challenge customization could work both ways if they do it correctly, you know what I mean? Anyway, that is everything. That's the whole TLDR of all of the blog posts. I don't know how long this video is, but I cut it down from like 50 minutes, so it's going to be better than that. Anyway, if you liked the video, please leave a like, subscribe, all that kind of jazz, and I'll see you next time. Bye, guys.